I don't know what was told to them, but friends that I know myself had told me, Ed, you never get a museum going in Lincoln City, or they say things like, you can't get anything going in Lincoln City, you can't start, So, but anyway, through desire, determination, and dedication, we stayed with it and got what we got now.
So would you say that was 86 or 87 when you first got
I
the...
don't remember. Geez, I can't remember this morning. After I got to be 40, I started getting forgetful. I remember when we first started collecting things, we didn't have a place yet. And we were paying to have some of it stored. But after we got the first place down the street here in the Taft area, which we thought was a humongous place, after we got that going and people started coming in and seeing it, oh, he says, I got some stuff from my grandfather out in the barn. It's a bunch of junk. You want that kind of stuff? We said, yeah, we want everything. Then stuff started coming in and we outgrew that place. Then we went up to the old, by the Shell station, which at that time was a BP station, in that Growth Gates used to be in there. And that place, I was always concerned about a fire in there because that wooden floor was from having the machinery going, had just oil soap. Another bad thing about it, that furnace was going all the time, and there's no insulation in the floors, walls, or ceiling, so we was heating the whole area around it. But there used to be a myrtle wood factory right next door that burned down years ago, and I was always concerned about a fire there, because if there was a fire there, we'd have lost everything. And we were starting to get some good things in, like we got up to getting the Lincoln collection and a lot of other good things that would never been replaced. But when we got the chance to get the City Hall, which is the old City Hall, excuse me, well then we moved it up in here, and I was glad to be out of that fire trap, but I see it's still standing. Maybe you got a good sign.
Actually, I think they're putting in a pizza and pool parlor there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's
The
better than sitting empty, I suppose.
Spofford.
Who's doing it?
Spofford.
Oh.
Well, tell me how you got the first building down here on the highway.
It was for rent, and we looked in. It had been, like everything else, it had been a number of businesses in there. I remember when it was an antique store, and it had been many things. And I often wondered when I was volunteering in the museum, sitting in them showcases, I thought, boy, if those showcases could talk, because we'd bought them from businesses that went out of businesses that went belly up or moved, but they didn't want to take the showcase with us, so we bought the showcases. And I often thought, yeah, if those showcases could talk, they'd probably been up and down this 7 miles through the years on one side of the street and the other, and one end of town and the other, which I thought, boy, that'd really be interesting if they could talk. But then we got a chance to get some mannequins. I wrote to Marion Franks and different places, and finally we had a chance to get a mannequin up, well, we got several of them from the basement of a business uptown that had been a kind of a dress shop and different things like that. We got them out of the basement, but they were all different parts, and the guy said, put them in a pile and I'll make you a price. He says, and make the check out to me, not to business. Oh, I thought that was interesting. But anyway, we got some mannequin parts. And then I heard from Marion Frank. They says, we got one, but you got to get it up. You'll have to come and pick it up off the dock. Okay. So at that time I had a car that was a fastback, so Marion and I drove in. It was way out on the east side where their warehouse was. And I went up on the loading platform and told the guy who I was. Oh yeah, it says there it is there, and it was a big humongous box. And I dragged it out to where the car was parked and opened it up, and there was mannequins parts was all in there, but a whole bunch of these other chips of plastic or whatever you call them. I thought, oh, I don't want that humongous box, so I took the body parts out and handed them down to Marion, and she put them in the back of the deal, and I got in it. We drove away, and we left that big humongous box with all those plastic things, pieces in there, and I had to really reach down and make sure we had all the parts, and we kind of put it together in the back of my fastback car to make sure we had it all. So we're heading back to Lincoln City, and we just stopped at a market. And I got out of the, Marion went in to buy some incidental things, and I got out of the car and was standing in front of the market there to kind of stretch my legs. I see a guy come out of the market with an armload of groceries, and he walked by and he glanced in. He stopped and he went back up looking again. He thought there was a nude woman in the back. Then he went on. I had a chuckle out of that. Anyway, there's a lot of little incidentals like that that get in the museum going that I'll remember all my life.
Right.
Another good one was when we did move from the place up by the Shell station, that anchor. I thought, oh, what are we going to do with that big anchor? And I got a guy that had a flatbed, he doesn't live here anymore, but a flatbed tow truck. He put it on it, tips the bed, snaked it up there. Then we backed up out here in front, and he's unloading it, and a state cop come by. I thought, oh, we're going to get a ticket. Well, he was upset. We didn't have a permit to back in there and do that. We didn't have a flagman out there in front to tell people that he's debating what to do. In the meantime, the guy's dumping the anchor and flattens his bed out and bails out, and the cop says, oh, next time you ever do anything like that, okay. I give him I showed him my halo, and we got through that one.
Now,
Yeah.
who donated that anchor?
We had, that anchor was found on 51st Street. A fella had a restaurant there. Excuse me. And one time at low tide, it showed out in the bay, part of it. And he was involved with the high school, and the story I hear, a bunch of the high school students, he got them to go down and dig that out of the mud, and he put it in front of his restaurant, which had been, it was not a restaurant, really kind of a hamburger stand affair, I guess, before my time down here. And it was out there as kind of like a show and tell thing for his restaurant, too big for anybody to pack off. Finally, he sold the restaurant through the years later and took the anchor to his home, and he had it in his yard. Well, when I got a phone call, he was selling his house and wanted to know, did we want the anchor, because it was from the bay, even though he lived in Portland now, and this and that. I said, oh, you're darn right I do. So I had a fellow with a trailer, and we went in there and picked that anchor up and brought it down. And that was when we were still by the Shell station, and we had it in there for a long time. Same thing was with that mine, that Japanese mine. The people were moving and wanted to know, did we want a museum? And this was almost out to, out past, I don't know what to call that area where she lives. But anyway, it's out to past Otis, and it was in their yard, and they were selling their house. And again, Dave Beach and I went out. He had a pickup truck, excuse me, at that time. We went out there, and we got this Japanese mine. She says when they lived at Glen Eden Beach, that one time had washed up in the morning. They saw it, and all the neighbors were talking on the phone with each other, and they called the authorities. And she said later that afternoon, big van comes down and guys are getting out, and they walk over and look it over, and they came back and they pushed a big sand deal where they got behind with telephones, and one guy went out with his communication, and he was a long time. He got that cap off. I guess everybody's nervous about this, and he got that cap off and took the detonator out and the charge out, and didn't even put the cap back on it. Took those, and they all got in the van and took off, left it. And she said for a couple of days that mine laid out there in the yard, so her husband put a cable on it and his rig and pulled it up to their yard, and it sat there as kind of a show and tell piece for years. And then when they moved out to this place out past Otis, they took it with them and had it in the yard. Well, when they sold their house, of course, by this time we're getting a lot of information about the museum. We'd had book sales, we'd had articles in the paper and things like that. In fact, the News Guard gave us a full page a couple of times, full page ad about the museum. And so it started paying off with people bringing stuff. Well, we eventually outgrew that place, and we're up there by the Shell station, and we got this big mine in there. Well, during the weather, the trigger things that stick out on it had worn off, and we never did get the cap that was on the top that he took out, probably buried in the sand out there someplace. But that was an interesting item that we picked up, that it's a history of this area. I was thinking, gee, what if some kids would have went down and found that thing and started pounding on it?
Yeah, really.
Terrible.
How old do you think that anchor is? Do you think that came off of a sailing vessel that wrecked out here?
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Maybe, or either some, because a vessel would have lost that big anchor out there. they would have retrieved it, I'm
Yeah.
sure, but it could have been a vessel that was just disintegrated and the heck with it. But this, and then maybe it was buried for years too, I don't know, maybe between under mud and water, but this one time the tide evidently took enough mud and silt away from it where part of it was exposed. And the guy saw that, and the light bulb went off in his head. He'd get these young guys gung-ho, and they dig up in the mud, which an ordinary person wouldn't probably do for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what else is out there under the mud. Probably the rest of some of those old schooners.
Oh, sure. Could be. Well, that's why they call it Schooner Creek, probably.
Yeah.
Because, well, you know, years ago, the vessels would come in there, and they'd come down the river and come into the bay. Not now. You need hip boots.
So how long have you been in this area, Ed?
Well, I bought the property in the early 50s. That lot I live on, it was a gravel road, had no...
Where is, tell me exactly.
Oh, in the Cutler
where it
area,
is.
Cutler area.
Okay.
Yeah, years ago they used to have rhododendron festivals there. In fact, Charlie DePoe that has Depot Bay, had got that in a land grant, that Cutler area. And then the Cutlers got it, and that's where the name Cutler, why they call it Cutler City, I don't know, with the city of a couple of businesses there. But anyway, I bought this, I saw it in the paper. We'd come in down and we'd stay in at the parks, state parks here at that time.
Had you been, where were you living at that time?
In Portland, yeah.
And that was about when?
Well, early 50s when we got involved here, yeah. We saw it in the paper, these lots, $100, $10 down, $10 a month. Well, we'll look at it. So a couple of weeks later we come down and looked at them. It was a gravel road, no sewers, but it was all salal and blackberries. And we said, hey, let's take one. Well, we'll think about it. We went back home, and so I was buying a car, buying a home, and raising 3 kids. And I was making $255 a month in the fire department in Portland. Marion got the sharp pencil out. Well, we can afford the $10, so we come back a couple of weeks after that, told the guy, he laid the map out, and we said, oh, we'll take that one. And then through the years, we cleared it out and started building a little place there. I just got a 1-bedroom place there, and if family or friends come down, they want to stay overnight, they got to get a motel. And we'll be in the place. But then through the years, of course, it got paved and got the sewers in and everything. It was one of the best moves I ever made.
Yeah.
People say to me when I tell them that, why did you buy several of them? I was lucky to get one. Well, financially at that time.
Yeah.
Never get that chance now. That's, I forget what the lots are going for now. Of course, they fluctuate, so real estate, but beach property now is sky high.
So, any interesting things that have happened to Cutler City since that time?
Well, yeah, there was some vandalism going on down there, and what they've got is a neighborhood watch group going, and I was at a meeting with them last night, and they're thinking about making a neighborhood association down there, because then you got, as just a group like it is now, they all get together once a month and talk and problems with the police and the code enforcement officer, and they're all there. And this, but by being a neighborhood association where you got some president and a secretary and you're taking notes and you got some accountability, excuse me, they've got more clout to get things done down there. But as it is, they're going to get more street lighting, and they got, of course, that little part of the sidewalk in through urban renewal, and so it's shaping up pretty good.
What happens to Cutler City when there's a flood or a tsunami? Have you ever had any tsunami?
No, we had a warning one time, and the fire trucks went through, and the guys were talking to the speaker, and it was in evening. In fact, early in the evening. I don't think had gone to bed yet. And we were told to get out. So we threw some things in a car and drove up here to Taft to the laundromat, which is up there, higher up. Plus, I know there's water there and toilet facilities and everything. I thought, hey, that's a place to go rather than go up someplace else. And then, I think it was a couple hours we were up there, and then all clear come. And that was when they had that earthquake in Alaska.
Yeah, 64.
And Is that it?
I think so.
Time, I can't remember things with time, dates. In fact, I gotta wear a nameplate to know who I am myself, but then when I look in the mirror to read it, it always is fouled up.
So you raised your kids down here?
Well, we had the home in Portland, and I raised in Marion and went to school there. Excuse me, but summers we'd come down.
Yeah.
And weekends and stuff like that. In fact, my younger son, who has passed away, he lived down here after he got out of high school for about a year and a half in the place. Yeah.
So when did you move down permanently?
79. Yeah, 79. And we give stuff to all the relatives that they didn't want. Then we had a yard sale. And then we come down here and we still had too much stuff. The big living room had piles of stuff. Get rid of some of it. So we had another yard sale down here. Yeah.
You gave a lot of stuff to the museum.
Yeah, well, Dave Beach had that pickup truck, and when I heard about stuff, we'd go get it. We went way up Inman Road and got that farm machinery that's here. That was given to us. A lot of people, well, they bring in small items, but any of the bigger things, you could have it for the museum, but you got to come and get it. Oh, okay, away we'd go. Then Marion and I went to auctions and things and bought stuff for the museum too. The museum didn't have any money, so we bought the stuff ourselves, like the old vacuum cleaner, the hand, or I don't know, it's not a vacuum cleaner. I guess it's a dust, or I don't know what you call them, those things. But anyway.
I guess it's called a vacuum. That's what we call it now.
Oh, okay then.
But everybody wonders how it really worked.
Mm-hmm. Then at that time, the city attorney, that was, when this was City Hall, I come in and talked to her one time about, and at the same time I was on the board of directors for the museum in Newport, and I thought, well, that's probably not right, me being president of this and involved in that, because they were upset that they didn't, not to me personally, but I heard back wrong way, they didn't want us to start getting some of the money because it would take out a percentage of what they were getting, and they were doing darn good. And
that was county funds. That
yeah,
was a
that was,
line item for historic preservation.
So I talked to the city attorney here, and she contacted the county attorney down in Newport, and we ended up getting some of the money for here, percentage of what they were getting. So I thought then I'd get away from that, and so I resigned from that. Well, plus one night, the meetings were always at night down there, and I left one night, and it was it was in the winter, snow on the ground. I thought, oh, I got to drive over that mountain this way. No change or nothing. I thought, what am I doing coming down here for meetings at night? But I coming back, and as I come back up over the headlands, it was just wet. Oh, lucked in again. But that's how come we got the fundings here. I got the city attorney to get a hold of this county city attorney, and
now it seems to be a pretty compatible situation.
oh, I think, well, I'm sure a lot of those people have changed and
Yeah.
Moved on or tipped over or something. Nothing stays the same. Nothing stays the same. Everything's in emotion.
Yeah.
Like the ocean.
Right.
A little poetry. You're into poetry. You can use that if you want. Everything's in motion like the ocean.
So tell me, you have any stories about any of the other items in the museum?
I had one item, I don't know what it is, or I still don't. In fact, and the News Guard, I'll tell you, it would really been good to us. It took a photograph of it and asked people, anyone that knows this, and we never did get any response on it. So we had things like that going on, and we had contests, we had drawings, and we had raffles, and I don't even know if we were allowed to have raffles and things, but we had them anyway, and those were all interesting.
You know the story of the still?
Which one?
Well, there's a great big one
Oh,
back in the
excuse me.
storage.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, that come up in the, it was found in the brush, according to the people that give it to us. They didn't know anything about it. It was found in the brush, but yeah, you know, well, we're not going to press them with it anymore. We just accepted it, and
Well, you know, when I last spring, I drove around the whole Taft area with Sylvia DeForest,
Mm-hmm.
and she would point out various houses where she said, he had a still,
Oh,
he
I
had
think
a
it was
still.
quite common, sure, it was quite common that people that were into that had it. Another interesting thing, I remember we had the meetings, were always in different restaurants because we didn't have space to have meetings, especially when we first got started, we didn't have a place at all. Then we had the small place down here that was, down the street a ways. It wasn't big enough, so we had meetings in restaurants, and it was all, each person paid for their own. But we had drawings, and to keep up the interest, we'd have, Marion would always get something for a couple of prizes for them to have at the drawing. And those were always popular, and then sometimes we'd even have entertainers. One time we had Charlie DePoe and people like that come and talk to our group. And of course we'd buy their lunch for them. Those were interesting.
Yeah.
And we had those, all the restaurants that could hold us, I think, from one end of the 7 miles to the other. At one time or another we had meetings in them. And then some of them we'd duplicate and we'd go back.
People couldn't say then that they didn't know we had a museum.
Yeah,
like they say, a lot of people say that now.
Yeah.
That, well, I didn't even know we had a museum in Lincoln City. Since we have our new sign, that's helped some. But it's amazing that it's the best kept secret around town.
A lot of people are just in their own little world. They're in their computers and their job and their home, their job and their home. They don't, it's strangers that come to a community. I read one time something, I forget how it goes. It says if you want to know about your community, this was about like historic things and whatnot. And at that time I had read an article where museums was one of the top 3 interests to tourists and people that go visit areas. And it says if you want to know about your community, ask someone that visits there, because they'll know where the locals take.
Well, your first impressions of a place, it's a new impression. When you first came down here, can you remember how you felt about how it felt to you?
Well, it was all the little beach towns, and at that time it was known as the 20 Miracle Miles, and had this, I saw it in the press too, where some politicians would call it the 20 Miserable Miles, because at that time it took in Depot Bay too. And in between it, there was a lot of junky places there, where the pull-off is there by D River. There was an old dilapidated place that had been a fish house or something, I guess. That would sit there for years, just dismantled, and the graffiti all over it, and a lot of things like that. Shacks, and there's still a few that be cleaned up now at this time, but at that time it was really not too good. But they wasn't as popular then either, because they were all fishermen or loggers, and if you say you talk to the older people there, and I was interested to find out some of them, there's no money for the young people to do anything here. So they would walk and hitchhike and ride and get over to Grand Ron and get the train there to go to the valley and pick hops. Then they says they could usually get a ride with somebody coming back. Did DeForest tell you about that? She's one of the people that told me about that. That's what she did as a young lady.
Who did?
And her friend Sylvia DeForest.
Oh.
Yeah, in fact, I wish I had a tape when I talked to her. She was a good talker, and she told me about that. They did that every year to make money for school and clothes and things.
We have
camp
2 or 3 pictures of people picking hops.
Yeah. She said they'd camp on the way, just pull off the road and set up there and camp to make money. Nothing for them here to make any money, unless you're a logger or a fisherman or something.
And she and Lila Hill and a few others had a batching cabin down here.
Oh, yeah?
A batching place. They were the bachelor girls when they were going to high school.
Oh, yeah?
Because they didn't want to walk back and forth every day. So during the week, they stayed in I think it was a warehouse that was belonged to one of the store, one of the stores down here.
Yeah.
And they set up housekeeping there, and
Yeah.
there were about
Good, yeah,
6
well,
of them.
You survived by your skills and what you knew.
They probably had a great time doing that
Oh, I'm
too.
sure of it. Yeah, that would have been a good story right there in itself,
Yeah.
wouldn't it? There's a lot of stories all over. Everybody has a story. You know, it's interesting.
Well, you have had a lot of interesting stories in the News Guard, in your column.
About once a month, sometimes twice a month.
How long have you been doing that?
3 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the one about you climbing Mount Hood, and that resonated with me because I climbed it once.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, one year I took a group from Lincoln City to climb Mount Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. The first time we tried was stormy up there, so we had drove all the way in there for nothing, and we come back the next day, and we set a new date for it, and I took them on the new date, and we made it, and it was a nice day. Well, it was real interesting. I wrote about the time when I took 6 students from the Vancouver School for the Blind. I wrote about that one, and a lot about around here too, but some of them were about when I was in the Navy, and some of them about when I was in the fire department, and I got the stories aren't all just one subject. I mixed them up.
When did you retire?
79 when I first.
That's when you came down here.
Yeah, the winter of 79 and 80, yeah.
Yeah.
I come down here full time, yeah. I did 28 years in the Portland Fire Department. 4 years and 8 months and 3 days in the Navy. I used to have the hours and the minutes, but I forgot them.
Tell me about your experiences in the Navy and about Pearl Harbor.
Well, I was a young kid and I wasn't working, and my dad was working for 35 cents an hour in a packing house.
Where was that?
In San Jose, south of San Francisco. And at that time, I suppose those were all condominiums and townhouses now, but at that time it was orchards and things that produce, a lot of produce. And I was just another mouth to feed in the family, so I was going to join the Navy, and I was just a young kid, and I went to join the Navy, and the guy says, "How old are you?" And I told him, and he said, asked some other questions. He says, "When were you born?" And I told him he's going to try to trick me now to find out I wasn't old. I said, "Well, okay," and he got a couple of pages of information, and then he says, "Call your folks," and finally he called my folks, says, "Your son's down here, wants to go." I guess my mother told him, well, that's what he wants to do, and this and that. So anyway, I got in.
How old were you, and when was
17. They sent me, but I could still get in the movie for a dime, and I shouldn't have done that, because my folks would give my younger brother a dime to go to the movie and give me a quarter for adult fare. And we had 15 cents worth of penny candy, and in those days that was a lot of candy. So we'd sit in the movie and watch it in the afternoon. But anyway, they sent me up to San Francisco, and there was a bunch of guys in there, and this was where the other was just verbal. This is going to be physical and medical and everything. The guys come in, they do your ears and your nose and make sure you everything. Then the guy puts it in your strip to your shorts, and the guy puts a tape around. I guess there's a minimum that you had to have a chest expansion. Puts a tape around my chest, says, "Okay, take a deep breath." He says, push your chest out, take a deep breath. And I guess it wasn't moving the tape hardly at all, or at all. And I was getting red in the head, and whatever the minimum was, he says to another guy, well, I forget what, and the guy wrote that down and took the tape off, said, "Next." I shouldn't have, I think it was 6 months before the war, and I think they were probably more lenient as getting guys, because I think at that same time they were even drafting guys, and because I know down south they had what they called the Red Army and the Blue Army, and they didn't even have guns, they had sticks, and they were doing marching and things like that. Otherwise I probably wouldn't even got in the Navy. In fact, when I went through boot camp, we did a lot of exercises there and skills and classes and stuff. Then when we got time to ship out, you had the sea bag, which is quite big. Then we had our blankets and mattress, I almost said, mattress pad, I'll say, and then the hammock, canvas hammock, and that's rolled up, and then that's put around your duffel bag, and that was quite an arm load for a young looking guy.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, all the guys threw him on their shoulder and marched to the bus. And I'm dragging mine. A couple of guys that felt sorry for me, they come and picked it up and carried it to the bus for me. When we got off the bus down at the docks in San Diego, they all put theirs out of the compartment of the bus and they put on there to go walking to get on this ship. And it was called the Holland. It was a Navy submarine tender and had wooden decks. I couldn't get it up, pick it up, and I'm dragging it, and people are all standing, the civilians that work in the dock, they're all standing in the dock, opening of the dock, watching, and a guy come out with a wheelbarrow and put my thing in, and I wheeled it down to the gangway, and I did, to this day, don't know how I finally got that thing to get on deck up there with it, but I was embarrassed wheeling that thing and heard all the sailors up there looking down. What is this? Thinking the kids can't even pack their gear. And on that ship, we were just passengers to go over to Hawaii. In the morning, they had us get up, and we had to scrape, had metal deals, the wooden deck, and in between was tar strips. Well, during the heat of the day, whenever you walk, there's pick tar up, little spots around. We had to get on our hands and knees and scrape those off. Then in the afternoon, they pumped salt water over, and the guy had a fire hose. He just washed it down. And another guy's, these were ship's company guys, and another guy's spreading sand on the wet. And then we were coming along with stones, they called it holy stone, with an indentation and a broom handle, and actually we were sandpapering that deck. But us flunky guys, we were doing that part, they were doing the sand. But I think we took about 5 days to get over, so it went fast. Mm-hmm. Then I got over there.
Were you seasick?
I don't remember that there, but I was at some storms at sea. We had times of storms at sea when you'd be going up the companionway, the ladders, and the ship lurching your way while you're fighting up. Then it goes the other way, and you're going real fast. You're scared you're going to go. And on those kind of deals, they just had sandwiches. You couldn't fix a meal because the trays you eat on would be sliding all around, so you just had cold sandwiches. But there was a lot of guys that were considered themselves old salts that got a little upset during that kind of stormy things. Yeah, interesting. Couldn't do it now. Too old.
So then you got to Hawaii.
Yeah, got there and I got on the ship, and that was there. It's called the Right, and it was pointed at both ends. It was a seaplane tender. It was interesting. We got a kick out after the war started that the Japanese couldn't tell whether we were coming and going because it was pointed at both ends like a big humongous canoe. I was on there one day and the guy said, "Hey Ed, your name's down there on the board to go over to the Solace." This hospital ship had come through the Panama Canal from the East Coast and had just a couple of days been there. I said, "No kidding," and I went down to look, and I was to go over there and have my tonsils out. Well, I didn't have any problem with my tonsils, but I think they wanted to make a skill for these technicians and doctors and nurses that are on this hospital ship. They wanted guys that hadn't had their tonsils out or circumcised was going. Well, I had a beat on the one, but I got over there and I was real nervous and everything about this. Got on there and they showed us the bunks where we were staying, and hey, we're doing a lot of this. And the next morning they had us come and line up, and we went in, and they took us in one at a time, and it was like sheets and the two stools. They set you on one stool, nurse got you all prepped with his aprons and things, and the doctor come and he had a wire loop. You could hear the guy over here, and he'd leave that guy and threw that thing in a basket, and he'd come and had another one for you. Gee, it was not good. I thought, I'll never eat again, But of course, but anyway, while I was on that hospital ship, when the attack came. In fact, you don't get to sit around. I was involved with a motor launch, and there's a little motor in there and a hand crank, and the coxswain's in the back and the guy in the bow, and he had a bell back there. 1 was you went forward, 2 you went back, 3 you stopped. And so, I mean, any dummy could do it, so they had me doing it. We were waiting to take a crew over to fellas over to a church services at Fort Island, so we were all ready to go. When the attack come, we went over to the battleships and take casualties off. And the Curtis, another seaplane tender, took a plane, crashed into it on purpose, and as casualties, we went over and got those too. And then we got guys out of the water, and there's oil, it was, the fellas that are in the water, some of them could have died any one of three ways. Either suffocation from the smoke, drowning, or burnt from the fires that were there. So we that's all we did for most of the morning, was just go getting guys out until we got so much freeboard in the boat that we had, launch, that we had. After a while it got a little touchy, and we'd go unload and then go back again, because we could get swamped or something, especially when you pull up the battleship. Some of the guys were jumping off, landing on you, and it got a little hairy there for a while.
Sounds like total chaos.
It was,
but
yeah.
you had a job to do, and
Yeah.
so that was.
Then the next day was almost as bad, although there was no chance of getting hurt. The bodies on the hospital ship that fellas didn't make it, we had them they had what they call a mattress cover that fits over your mattress pad. They had these guys in there with head first with their feet sticking out, and there'd be a tag on their toe, and a lot of them say unknown or something like that. We had them stacked up in the boat, taken over to the land, and the next morning.
So how did that affect you as a 17-year-old?
Yeah, it makes you. Of course, a lot of guys were saying, "Oh, nothing happens to me. I won't ever drink or swear or do anything again." A month later, right back. It did affect you. Yeah. In fact, the one thing that affects me as much as that, of course, that's longer ago, and you kind of, because I had so many things happen since then, was in the fires you get a lot of things like that. And the one that I always remember, early in the morning, we went to respond to this fire, and we're always hoping, oh, it's a false alarm, you're half asleep and you're hanging on and putting your gear on as you're going, and then finally you're getting closer and you can see the smoke and flames. It's at night, early morning. Oh, we got a burner, okay, now we got to start shaping up. We pull up and we put the hoses in and we put the fire out and this and that. And then now we got to go up on the roof and tear these old wooden shingles off, because some of them are still smoldering and we don't want to, what you call a rekindle, have them to start again. Was up on the roof with another guy, and we got our axes and we're tearing these shingles off, and they're falling down, and get in this attic room. It's still full of smoke and kind of clearing out. And in fact, downstairs they already got fans that pull the smoke out of the room, and another fans that's pushing fresh air in, where the guys are down there working, cleaning up after. I said, look, oh my God, here's a girl, her age I wouldn't have any idea, but in my own mind maybe 10 or 12, charred body of a little girl. She's on her knees and she's reaching for the window. Her arms are out like that. I thought, oh God, I wish I hadn't seen that. But anyway, that's one that never goes away. Then we found out later, and where she was is built out over the porch, the house, frame house. That attic room was built out over the porch. And what had happened, we found out later, that the father that lived there wasn't even home. He worked nights. The mother and the kids that slept downstairs had gotten out. How many, I don't know, kids were. But what it was a firebomb. It was somebody deliberately torched that house off. Gee, that's terrible, terrible. But these things are happening all the time in the world, I guess. It's a shame.
So what was the aftermath in Hawaii, at Pearl Harbor, after those first 2 days?
It was a lot of confusion, a lot of mess. Of course, they figured they was going to come back again, and in fact, some of the aircraft carriers that were out at sea, their flyers had come in. They launched them from the carriers, and they were going to land at the bases in Hawaii, and several of those were shot down just by nervous people.
Yeah.
Trigger.
Friendly fire.
Yeah, oh, that's terrible, and that happens in every engagement.
Yeah.
Every engagement you have. bad enough to be, hurt by the enemy, let alone by your own.
And then the guys that do it, they have to live with that too.
Yeah. It's and a lot of them don't. I think that's where you get some people get involved with alcohol and when they're trying to drown their things. Yeah, I try to get involved in other things. keep going. Well, like Marion don't feel good, and she reads a lot to escape her sickness and injuries and things.
Yeah.
Plus, it takes a lot of medication too, but that don't always cut it. Yeah. So you try to find some other way to alleviate your personal headaches or problems.
Yeah. Self-hypnosis helps.
Yeah.
So I know the guys in World War II had what they called battle fatigue. Is that what they call delayed
Some
stress
do.
syndrome now?
Some do. Fellow that married my daughter was in Vietnam deal, and he was in a line of a patrol of about 12 or 15 guys. I forget the count now. Somebody triggered a mine, they don't know who, and he says one guy wouldn't be, nothing happened to him, the next guy might be killed, the next one might just be wounded, the next one, two might not any, and then maybe back in the line a couple of casualties. And he took shrapnel in his legs, which he's still on some disability because of that circulation and whatnot in his legs. So you never can tell, you know. Here's 12, 15 guys just walking out in the brush and jungle, and they had these mines set up, and somebody triggered it. Could have been somebody in the back, somebody in front, they don't know, just a big explosion, and everybody falls into the brush. He says that later when you get up, you find out his legs were bleeding, and here's a guy maybe right in front of you that's killed. Guy back here, nothing happened to him, and it's a terrible waste.
Sounds like, yeah.
It's a waste of lives. It's a waste of materials and things. And, oh, gee, and it's never going away. It seemed like World War I remember reading that was the war to end all wars. And look how many's been. So they're going on someplace in the nation, I mean the world, all the time, it seems like.
Yeah. How many generations of young men have we lost?
Yeah. And kids, like over there in the Midwest now, and even what's going on up in Ireland, where these guys would put a bomb in a car and park it in front of a department store or something. Gee, and it blows up and kills kids, innocent people, because they're making a statement. I guess, gee, they're making a mistake is what they're making. It's not a statement.
And in war, and you were talking about in the Vietnam on patrol, it's the randomness and that you have no control.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have very much control.
No, you don't have any. I don't have any. I read an interesting book. It's still available. It's Truth is the First Casualty of War. I thought that was a good title, so I had the book. Since then, I've given it to some other people, and you know how when you lend books out, after a while you lose track of who had it, and they forget who they got it from, and they lend it to somebody anyway. If other people read it, it's good. But it's telling about truth is the first casualty of war, and that's the propaganda you get, and the other guys are the bad guys. We're
heroes.
The good guys, sure, yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, interesting. It was interesting, and it went into specifics and stuff. I thought that was a really good book.
Well, imagine in order to take young men who have just been raised in an ordinary family and turn them into fighting men, they have to change their minds in some way.
Yeah, fire them up. And that's what you do when they go through the boot camps and things like that. Fire them up, sure. And it's never going to change, I guess. But it's a shame, but I don't think it's ever going to change. Let's face it, these military people, that's the only way they can get fast and good promotions is during war. And the people in industry, that's the way they can make the money. A lot of millionaires may have made from wars.
That used to be kind of looked down upon, to make money out of munitions and things like that.
Yeah, they all do that. lumber and metal and all that stuff that's wasted. And after the war, they just leave things over in the islands when I was over there, when the war was going to be over. They shoved planes off the decks to get rid of that stuff. Ships and tanks are still sitting out in them islands, and like there's no tomorrow. Imagine if all that equipment could have been used for the good of the building and constructing things here in the States.
Turn your swords into plowshares.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. Yeah, no, I doubt if it will ever change.
So were you in Hawaii during the entire war?
No, we went to the other islands, yeah. I even had a chance to go to Australia. We were a seaplane tender, but we didn't actually tend any seaplanes. What we did was haul motors and fuel and food and troops to the different islands. And yeah.
So what islands were you?
Well, the one that I can remember real good was between Guadalcanal and Tulagi. And in fact, that's called, even today, it's known as Iron Bottom Sound, because more ships were sunk in that area of ours and the Japanese than any other area concentrated there. And we were there and unloading. We had troops and we had food, cases of food that our ship loaded us up. We even had stuff on deck, but there's no docks or anything to unload it, so they'd bring barges out and we'd unload on barges, and then they would, smaller vessels would take those in and bring other, and we kept doing that. And then every night the enemy come over and would bomb. And this one night we just sit there quiet with no lights, and the other vessels are around. And this one night, we were only there for about 5-6 days, but this one night a merchant ship right ahead of us decided to move. They were bombing the airfield there, and they started moving. Well, at night, that fluorescent foam is just like a spotlight. It's in the bow, and then it's in the back churning from the screws. And we thought, gee, that's like here I am, guy. And they did get hit. And then we were really concerned, because as it's burning, it's like a big spotlight on us. But there's, I don't know, they were all out of ammunition or whatever. The planes had all gone. So all night that thing's burning, and we've got no fingernails left. And then the day after that, we got out of there. Oh, was we glad to get out of that, out of that place. Yeah. In fact, there was several big Navy battles in there as the enemy was coming to supply their troops still on Guadalcanal and Tulagi. And then we were trying to stop them from that, and so they had a lot of Navy battles there. And we both sides lost vessels and men. Another waste. This reminds me of like maybe a big funnel. Come on, everybody, get in. Yeah. What's the result? Terrible. I think a lot of those islands could have been maybe bypassed. Just try to starve them into surrender or something. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't work. But if you look at the lives that are sick, like the other islands like Tarawa and many of them.
Yeah.
They were like
the casualties were terrible.
Island. Oh yeah. Yeah, they were dug in so good. Yeah, they had these bunkers, with big logs and then sand piled on those. They take a direct hit from a bomb or a shell from a battleship and not even penetrate it. I mean, so then when the guys hit the beach, it's terrible, terrible. Not good. Anyway, that's why I like to get involved in this. I get involved I've been involved in 2 or 3 things all the time since I retired here. I didn't want to get into a chair and sit back. You probably know some people like that too. All day they're watching TV, and they only get up maybe to go to the refrigerator or go to bed or go to the bathroom. Otherwise, just sit there, go visit them and say, hey, come on, let's go out and get a sandwich and a coffee. Oh, we can fix something here. They're like in a little cocoon thing. But right now I'm involved with the goals 16 and 18, which is the dunes and the wetlands and stuff in our community here. And with the county, I'm involved with women's violence. And there's only 2 other guys on it. One of them's a sheriff. that's about it. Well, I've always been involved with the Friends of the Wildwood. We started that. We got another little nucleus of it. We wanted to get some hiking trails in the community, and we got them. And again, the help to the city. The city helped us a lot. Park, Ron Grover from the parks helped us a lot. And, yeah, we really got that going good.
I know you've been on practically every committee and in every organization volunteering in town.
Yeah, a lot of them.
In the 10 years I've been here, I've noticed that.
A lot of them, and a lot of them.
As well as on city council.
A lot of them, you'd be a chairman or the president, because people want to help you, but they don't want the responsibility of setting things up. Well, you find out when you do that, you're the one that has to do it. Yeah, they don't want the responsibility, but it's been interesting. I enjoyed it. I haven't been involved in anything that I've been disappointed in.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that I hope contributed and got it going good.
Yeah, I think so.
Like the museum and that trails group. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And years ago I was chairman of the Cutler Community Club, and I used to hear some good stories there from some old timers who are no longer with us now. The one elderly lady was telling me when they built the community, which now is a church, it's been several things since then. She said when they built that, the men all had hand tools, of course, and she said she liked to be where her father was planing these boards to make them fit, and then the curls of wood, she said, her and the other little girls, they would get those and stick them in their hair to be curls and things like that. I mean, the people they didn't have the things we have, but they were happy. It seemed like they were, I don't know, it was different then. They didn't have all the facilities and the mechanical things we got nowadays, but they all seemed happy.
Had to be more imaginative, maybe.
Yeah. And their needs, I mean, as long as they had the roof over the head and the meals, other things were frivolous, things weren't that important.
Where'd you grow up? In San Jose? Is that where you were born?
No, I was born in the San Fernando Valley, about a couple of blocks from the church there. And my folks, well, I've been writing about my dad now. He started off as a young fellow, big family. His dad was out of work, and it was in Milwaukee, and it was in the wintertime when he found out that there was a job on a farm, and his folks encouraged him to take
Oregon, or Wisconsin?
No, excuse me, Wisconsin, yeah.
Okay.
Cold, and he says, well, it's one less mouth to feed if he went. Plus, he didn't make much. I guess it was just a few cents a day, but he got room and board. And the farmer picked him up and took him out to the farm. The farmer's wife met him and says she's glad he'd come to help him on the farm, and give him cookies and milk. A lot of milk. He drank a lot of milk and cookies, and that was a real plus for him. Then the farmer showed him where to sleep upstairs. He showed him the room, and he got in there, and the farmer said, in the morning we'll go out to the barn, we'll start to work. Okay. It's cold, so he sees there's just a chair, a bed, and some hooks on the wall, and a window. And he put his clothes on the hooks and jumped in bed to get warm. Well, he can't get to sleep, and he knows why. That milk's starting to work. He has to go to the bathroom. He said he gets up and he dancing around. He goes to the door and opens the door. Well, it's all dark, the house. You don't want to wake them up to find out where the outhouse is. So he shuts the door again and jumps, and then the window. Oh, and he hopes the window will open. He opens the window and the snow and it's freezing, and he relieves himself and shuts the window. Oh, now it's okay. You go to bed and he gets warm and falls asleep. Next morning he gets up, comes down at night, humongous breakfast. Then him and the farmer bundle up, and he said he's on his way to the barn, and the farmer says, oh, come here a minute. And he goes over to him, and he points up at the window and says, I feel sorry about this, but don't ever let this happen again. He said there was a big frozen yellow streak down the side of the guy's house. How you start your first job. Yeah, very interesting. He had a job, he moved on, he got a job as like a Western Union delivery boy. He had a chance, he worked for them and did good, and they gave him a chance to get a uniform, which was big in those days, or a bicycle. And he says, well, the heck with the uniform. He's tired of running around on foot, he'd rather ride the bicycle. So one time he stops at a schoolhouse while he's on his routes, to get a drink of water from the bubbler from the fountain there. And he's getting a drink of water, and some other guys over there are eating a watermelon. They start throwing rinds at him, and they're landing all around him. So he looks up and sees why they're throwing those at him. One hits him in the eye. The guys scatter, of course, and he's screaming out in pain, and some other people come and they get him to a hospital, and he loses sight of that eye. Mm-hmm. Then I'm writing about that now. Then he works for a bakery, and he delivering cookies and stuff to a restaurant, and that's where he met my mother. But he didn't want to ask her if she was married or not. They were, of course, they're getting along pretty good. So he has another guy go. Well, he'd never heard about this deal that happened back in the Puritans, where the one guy asked John, or somebody asked another guy to go, and that guy ends up marrying her. But anyway, he got the information, and he asked her to go to a movie anyway, as far as I've gotten in that. But I'm going to end it later, fill in a lot, because later when he drives a truck for a Pacific Freight Lines, they go on strike, and that's when we're on what's called relief then. It's called welfare now. We're on relief. And then when they settled the strike, he went back to work, and him and some other guys were laid off because they were involved in the strike. And his was because of the glass eye. Oh, you can't. Years of driving, but now you can't drive with it, of course, anymore. Anyway, what I'm going to finally end up was the Omsberg thing here. That's how they identified him with the bodies that Omsberg had dumped in that
Oh, really?
deal with the glass eye, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I don't know how he got off without going to prison. I'll tell you.
So you're talking, what's the guy's full name, and what was the name of the mortuary?
Oh, it was Omsberg. It was his name, but they got onto him because they smelled this terrible odor there, and it's where it is right there now. And
where is it now?
Yeah, it's where it is right now, right next to where that little restaurant is. It looks like a chrome.
Right, just north of City Hall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in fact, where that chrome building is where the first NewsGuard newspaper used to be. Yeah. Anyway, some people complained about that, and the official went and opened it up, and there was some bodies in there. Well, my dad was already in a hole up at the cemetery with 6 other bodies thrown in all in the same place.
Was that at which cemetery?
The one up here.
Pioneer Cemetery?
Yeah. No, excuse me. The one back on the East Devils Lake Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big one.
So was Omsberg still around?
Oh yeah.
When they discovered this?
It was like no tomorrow, but he'd been buying things. He bought motorbikes for the kids. He had some young boys. And he had bought boats and a big home, and he was just spending this money. But what I can never figure out is why that's county attorney that he was voted out of office right after this, I think, because he got a lot of bad publicity out of it. And I was always wondering why the government didn't get the guy, because some of these people were veterans, these older people, mm-hmm. and the government paid for that, and it wasn't. So a couple of them that I know of were on welfare and were paid for by the entities that take care of welfare people, and he wasn't never called to account for that.
Did he just have the bodies in the
in the garage?
In the garage?
Yeah, and then they were taken on.
Were they in coffins, I hope?
I don't know, but it couldn't have been in because of the odor was what people.
How many were there, I wonder?
I don't know. I got all the newspaper clippings at home from.
Somebody said that Mike Holden's mother was one of the bodies.
I don't know about that, but I know Mike Holden's wife told me that it affected him bad. Well, I imagine it would. Everybody that's into there, because they're digging this stuff up, and by now it's kind of rotting,
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Was that in the 70s?
Yeah, 80s.
Yeah. 80s?
Yeah. I got all the news clippings. When I get to that part, I can really get facts straight, yeah.
So your father died in what year?
I forget now. I got all that information at home. I can't remember.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had an older brother and a younger brother, and my younger brother lives in Mexico, and my older brother was passed away, and So there was us three boys, and I was right in the middle, and I was always in trouble with one or the other, it seemed like.
What do you remember growing up? You grew up in Milwaukee?
No. We hit the road after my father lost his job driving the truck.
Mm-hmm.
We did the crops. We would follow the crops, work in the fields.
What kind of crops and what
Well, like,
states?
As well as in California and San Joaquin Valley mostly. And like lug boxes were big lug boxes, and we got 3 cents a lug box for tomatoes, picking tomatoes. And, stuff like that. Those grow close to the ground.
This was in the 30s, probably?
Oh, yeah. Then my brother and I, another guy on an almond place, my dad and another guy, they had horses with pulled tarps up next to a tree, fold the tarps out, and then they had axe handles with a rubber tire that's been cut and wrapped. I don't know how they did that, and then wired together. And they'd hit the branches of the tree, and the almonds would fall down. Then they also had long bamboo. If a cluster was off here or there and it didn't fall from doing that, they would wiggle it and shape. Then those almonds would all fall down on these tarps. Then they'd pull the tarps together and had scoop shovels and bag them and leave them there and move on to the next couple of, it took them several trees sometimes to get them to do that. But my brother and I, we got paid $1 a day to pick up the ones that were got off the tarp. Sometimes they'd fly out. And we also, then when they weren't doing that, we had 22s and we were to go out up in the orchards, and if the crows, and there was a lot of them, would come over, we would shoot at them and never hit any of them. But there's the noise that make them go away. But maybe another half hour or a couple hours, whatever, somebody would shoot over there and that big flock would come in, maybe a flock from another. Oh, we'd fire again, and so all we were doing is harassing them. Of course, in the evenings or when we weren't there early in the morning before we got there, they could be eating the almonds, I guess.
Nowadays they're warning us about shooting into the air because those bullets have to come down somewhere.
Right. Yeah, truly. Anyway, that's what I remember about childhood. That and going to a lot of schools.
I bet.
Yeah.
Did you miss some
to
schooling?
get in the Portland Fire Department. Yeah, I quit school to go in the Navy. I had to have, to be in the police, you had to have a high school diploma. In the fire department, you had to have 2 years of high school. Now that's all changed, of course. In fact, the police, they went to college. But, so I sent to all the schools I could think of to get, and then I used my classes in the Navy too, schooling that I had. And I got enough with all those. But I always remembered one school, I think it was in Santa Clara, which is also near the San Francisco Bay. They had a record of me being there 3 days or something like that. I didn't turn that one in, of course. Oh, yeah.
So,
Then as a
was
kid,
it hard to make friends?
oh yeah, and as a new guy in school, you're always challenged by the local bully. You know, they're gonna, his friends pump him up. Well, let's see what that guy's got, I guess, or something. So you always got after school. Oh, geez, here they're out there. Let's see how can I get home without going through that.
Sounds pretty
Yeah.
rough. Sounds like a hard
Yeah,
childhood.
well, I think it hones you.
Yeah.
So other things then don't.
Tell me about your mother.
Huh?
Tell me about your mother.
Well, she was working in this coffee shop when my father met her, and they got along good. And then when he had the other guy get the message that, hey, she was married, but she's not now, and she has a son. Oh, okay, so they divided her to go to the movies. That was the thing you did in those days. And they went to the movies, and they hit it off real good, and they got married. And come out to California. And he was working in the truck driver in this company that I told you about earlier, and she was a mother and a housewife, and never did work again after she got married because she had her hands full with us 3 guys.
What'd you learn from her?
Well, probably patience, which I've come to good use now. Yeah.
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 What do you feel you learned from your dad?
Well, that it isn't all roses out there, that you don't get anything handed to you. You gotta going to say fight for it. You got to work for it, and then you might not get it.
So what, was he a man of principle?
Values, yeah. Yeah, he wasn't a religious man as far as that goes, as far as, excuse me, like going to church or something, but he had his own values, and he passed them on to us. He tried to instill in us, I think, that you don't ever bring shame on your family in any way, even some minor ways. Yeah. And he was, if he thought we did wrong, he wasn't hesitant to go into action. He didn't take us aside and explain something to us. You knew you made the wrong move when you got booted in the rear end or smacked. I remember one time I couldn't, as a kid, I don't know, I'm supposed to take this pill, and even today I have a problem swallowing pills. I have to take a lot of water with it. Anyway, I couldn't get the pill down, and I guess I was crying and choking, and he was losing his patience with me. Whatever, I can't remember verbatim. But I can't, I'm crying. It's right there in my mouth. And bam, I'm under the table. And my younger brother said something. Bam, he's under the table with me.
Well, I know that dads and granddads did that.
Oh yeah,
days.
oh, sure. Well, talking about granddads, my mother told me that as a kid they didn't hang stockings up. What you did, you put a dish on a mantle. And in the morning you got nuts and fruit, to be an orange and apples and nuts and some hard candy. And that was a big thing. But if you were bad, you had a switch there. And knowing her father, I can believe that there's times when a kid would wake up in the morning and there'd be a switch in the dish. He was unruly to us kids who were like angels. I remember he'd sit in a chair. Different members of the family had to take care of him. He'd sit in a chair and he had a big old can that he spit his leaf tobacco he chewed in. And there's newspapers all around because a lot of times he'd miss. And he had a cane, and we knew just the area we could walk by him with, because he didn't just playfully hook you or tap you with it. You right, you son of So we kind of got back at him a little bit sometimes. I think we shouldn't have done that, probably.
Was he from the old country, or?
Yeah, he was, I don't know, remember too much about him except the negative stuff, so I really don't remember about him. Yeah, my father was, family was from Germany, and he told us during the First World War, anyone with a German was like the Second World War Japanese, although they didn't have internment camps in them, but he said they threw rocks at the house and stuff like that where he lived. People get irate, and some of them are drunks or radicals or rowdies or anyway, and all they need is some little thing to tip them off, and they know that. See, it was the name was pronounced Johann then anyway. There's a lot of Johanns in German, so they changed the pronunciation to Johann. That sounds more like a all American. Yeah, in fact, took groups to, when I had a guide service, took them to Alaska and Canada and Mexico and South America and Central America, and twice to Europe. And I was over in Norway, and they got that Johann. There's a boulevard, and there's some businesses. Of course, over there in Europe, it's a common first name, too.
Yeah.
Johann, yeah. Which I got educated on. And I got educated on going to Central America and South America. They all consider themselves Americans, which is they rightly are. Where sometimes here, especially in political or military things, we're Americans, and like we're all the only Americans there are is right out here. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of them all over the continent that are all Americans.
Yeah, that's why they always say de los Estados Unidos.
Yeah.
Of course, you have the United States of Mexico too.
Sure. Yeah.
So when did you do that? Taking people on tours?
When I was in the fire department, I lived in a house and I could see Mount Hood, and I thought, gee, I'd like to climb it sometime. So my son that passed away, he had diabetic and he had dialysis and all the problem. eventually, but at this time he was still in high school, and I thought, well, I'll take him with me, and we'll climb Mount Hood, and we did it. And later, a few months later, I heard, hey, there's St. Helens. We climbed one in Oregon, I'll climb one in Washington, and that'll be it, and we climbed that one, Mount St. Helens. And then that winter, at the firehouse that I worked at, it was a library a few blocks away, and I had them getting climbing books for me. They didn't have any even in the place, but they could get them from the main library. And I was reading all winter, so the next summer, him and I would climb 10. Not all snow-capped necessarily, or with glaciers, but other mountains in Oregon and Washington. And I got involved in it more, and I got involved with mountain rescue, and I got involved with that. I thought, well, I'll make some money guiding with these deals. So I got really, and that was interesting because I was doing everything either on the phone or, well, some locals I knew, but most of it was people from out of state, and I was on the phone or in letters. And a good example was like 2 guys from Florida. Oh yeah, they were in good shape. I think they were interns, or they were involved with the medical field somewhere. So I was going to take them to climb the middle sister, which is the easiest of the 3 sisters. I picked them up in Portland, took them down there to the end of the logging road out of Sisters, packed up all our stuff, went in, set up camp, fed them dinner. We all went to bed. They stayed up talking. I said, gee, you guys better turn. We're going to get up at 4 in the morning, something like that. Oh, and finally they went to bed in their tent. And I was in my little tent, you know. And next morning I got up and I said, okay, guys, let's go. And I got pumped the stove up, and I got the hot water going for some oatmeal, and another one pumped up for some hot cocoa or tea or whatever they want. And another thing we used to drink, hot Jello too. It's actually more RPMs than tea. They're grumbling and growling and pushing, and I'd go over in their tent and I open it up. Hey, come on, you guys, you know, it's around. Finally, they come out. I said, well, I think the last time I told them, hey, I'm going to go back to bed if you guys don't come out. We won't climb. Oh, they get up. The climb, they were pooped out, going up, and coming down there, just falling and fumbling around, and got back to camp. And I had a little creek that was trickle of the stream, because I always try to camp with this water, because you take on a lot of water, and as you get higher, you require more liquids. They're sitting there, and they finally get their boots off. They got their feet in the stream, and they're laying back. I say, "Come on, you guys, we got to get going to get out of here before dark." And finally, they moved around, and I said, "Well, here, I had some candy bars, and I wanted to get them energy going." And they nibbled on a candy bar and dozed off again. Finally, got them going. Oh, they couldn't carry their tent and their gear, so I had all that stuff on mine, while they're stumbling along with their light packs, and I'm like herding like what they call it, what's hard to herd is cats. Finally, we got to the cars. It was already turning dark. So I got educated there. You can't always go by what the person says. Oh, yeah, we're... yeah, right. Geez, I was glad when that was over. I was glad when that was over.
Well, it's like a couple of tenderfoots.
Oh, yeah, well, in their own mind,
yeah.
We'll go in there and climb the big mountains in Oregon. Well, of course, I guess if you're from Florida or someplace on the East Coast, these mountains are humongous.
Do you ever go to, up Jefferson?
Oh, many times, yeah, sure.
I heard that there was about room for 2 people up there, and if there were 3, one had to hang over the side.
Yeah, and it's a rock pinnacle, is what the deal is on that. After you do the snow climb, then you got to take off your crampons and leave your ice axe and stuff, and do the rock climb. And so it's a different technique altogether.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't prepared for that have been walking around on snow and ice and stuff like that.
Have you been up, I suppose you've been climbed on several sides of Hood.
Oh yeah. The best climb I had of that gives me good memories is the one when we took the 6 students from Vancouver School for the Blind to the top.
When you did what?
Took 6 students from the Vancouver School for the Blind to the top of Mount Hood. Well, we were 17 hours. Usually you can go do that, in about 8, or depending on the size of the group, how long it takes, because when you stop for something, somebody's getting too warm, they want to take, you start off, it's cool. They're getting warm, they want to take a park off. Okay, everybody stops, because the secret in the whole deal is keep everybody together. I never let anybody go alone, or we turn back, we all turn back. I've had young guys say, well, let's go on, guys, come back on your own, you can do it. But I ain't letting you go. You know, I've got people who are starting to get so happy about this time. And I didn't want any problems like that. So if somebody got hurt or weather turned bad, we come back, God, it's starting to turn bad, you can't even see the thing, the wind's coming, it's clouded in, and a couple of young guys, hey, let us go on, we got, no, we're all going back. And so anyway, you know, 7 hours up and down usually with a good sized group, 6 AW. But this time with these 6 blind students, we had 17 hours slow going, and we got up through the chute to get up to the Hog's Back. I had to, my son and I went up and we put aluminum pickets in and hand lines from those down. Then when to go up there, I didn't have the students use ice axes like we did. They had to use ski poles. And when we roped up, I had my sons and some other climbers I knew help me, would have the student that couldn't see would be roped to a person ahead of him and a person behind him. Then the next 3, I just had them alternated, set back so there was be a sighted person right next to him. And they're all on the same rope. And they could pull on the rope if they wanted to and use the, or on the other, if they're right-handed, the other one, and use a ski pole, and then the other person's there to talk to them and help. And it got daylight, and we stopped several times like everybody does to get up there. But anyway, it was, finally we got them up to the top, and one student had a camera and wanted us to take pictures for him a different round. And one girl was, and these were all about 15 years old. She's having a problem, and I'm wondering what's holding them up. And I'm looking down from the summit, and my 2 sons got her in the middle, and they got her pack on one of them, had their pack, and we finally got her up, so we got everybody up. That was really good.
Yeah.
And I felt good about that.
That ridge on the top is a little hairy.
Yeah. When you first start off, you kick steps in the snow, so then the next person enlarges them, so as people in the back are coming, it's more like coming up the stairs. Unless you get on the scree and that little rock things, then you're sliding back and you're going up and you're fighting it.
Yeah.
Fatigue. Yeah.
Well, that's quite an accomplishment.
I was up on Mount Hood another time. It was interesting. We made good time. They were all healthy people. There's 8 of us, and we're up there, and we're sunny, nice sunny day, and we're all flaked out like they'll do when they get up to the top. Well, then finally, after they kind of rest a little bit, they're up and talking and taking pictures. It says something about, gee, up north there's a lot of smoke coming out of the mountain. And everybody's talking and looking. I thought, well, I better have a look at this. And I was sitting there eating some dried fruit, and I got up and looked, holy Toledo, that's Mount St. Helens, and it was that first eruption of it. And we're all looking at it, and I didn't have a camera, of course. I'd taken so many pictures, I got slides I've never seen. And I thought, gee, I wish I had a camera now, and that people take pictures. And I got to thinking of that. I thought, hey, we're right, you know, it could be like zippers. All those peaks in the Cascade or this line, you know, like Mount Mazama used to be where it used to be Crater Lake. I mean, Crater Lake now used to be Mount Mazama.
Yeah.
And it collapsed, and I thought, geez, let's get off of here. So I got everybody together, and we got down. And then it was erupted again, and a few days later, and that one time those ashes went all the way around the world, and we had them here.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. Went out to get the paper one morning, and here there's a little film of ash on
no
the
kidding.
corners and the street. Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting.
I was living in Tigard, and
yeah.
on the other side of a little hill, and every leaf in 6 acres was covered with ash.
That's where my daughter and her husband and their boys have a mountain shop in Tigard on Hall Boulevard. They live right there.
Oh,
big,
yeah?
Big old 3-story home, yeah. They run a business in the daylight basement part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mountaineering gear, mostly skiing now. They rent them and sell them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure I saw that. Probably never went into it, but
Yeah, they live right there, yeah. It's They do a lot with, well, not only individual, but they do a lot with scout groups and church groups and whatnot. They go on weekend things.
That one group that went up Hood and all the school and all
Dumb,
the kids
yeah.
were killed. A lot of the kids died in that ice cave.
Yeah, they shouldn't have gone on. It was another deal where it was stormy weather and all weekend, you know, macho. And you can't fool with Mother Nature.
Yeah. Now they've got these finders that they
Yeah.
have to carry. That's a good thing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell me how you met Marion.
Well, I was in the Navy, and she worked at the Seaside Hotel, and I was in this, had come back to the States and had duty at the Astoria there. They were taking these aircraft carriers that are being built by Kaiser in Portland. They would come down to Columbia, and they was called the detail where the civilians would get off and the Navy would take over on these, and that's pre-commissioning detail is what the title of the thing was. But anyway, I was, we'd go down into the fire rooms and make sure everything did this and that on the gauges and stuff.
Is this after the war?
No, it was about the last year or so of the war. And so then for recreation, we didn't want to go to Astoria. It's all full of Navy guys and everything anyway. So we'd hitchhike and go to the Seaside where it's more fun. And so I got to meet her there. Yeah. We hit it off good. We've been married a little over 55 years now.
No kidding.
Yeah, one of the best things that ever happened to me. Yeah, supported me all the way, helped me all the way. Yeah. And now it's partners where it evolves. First you're lovers, and then you're it evolves into that your partners is supporting of each other. Yeah.
Good place to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we got. That's like I was telling somebody last night. I says, "How did you doing Christmas?" I says, "Wiped me out." I says, "Now I know why my father called Santa Claus the bearded bandit." He says he took his wallet and would squeeze it dry. I says, "You have kids, you're buying Christmas things for your kids, and they grow up and leave, and you think, oh, you got King's X, but then they have kids, so you're back in the thing. Then they all grow up, and you think, oh, now it's and now my grandkids got boys, young boys. I said, so it starts all over again."
So how many grandchildren and great-grandchildren do you have?
I got 2 great-grand boys, and the grandkids I got 3.
So when you were a kid, tell me about a Christmas that you remember.
We did the hanging the stocking deal, yeah.
Did you have a tree? And
Oh yeah.
was it a big special time for you, or?
Oh yeah, for us, oh yeah, we didn't sleep at night, you know. Well, we did, but we didn't go right to sleep because we were listening for that guy. I think it's going to come, you know. Want to see him. But we'd get up to 0 o'clock in the morning. Of course, my folks would still be asleep, but we could do the stockings. Then after they got up, we did the presents that were under the tree. But we didn't do the presents till they were, which was only right. But sometimes after we'd gone through the stockings and everything, we're looking at those, and there's one with my name on it, you shake it. Yeah, we always got toys and candies.
Remember anything that you got that you especially wanted?
No, I remember we were at my uncle's house a little before Christmas, and he showed us, everybody's in the living room, he said, "I'll show you what I got a couple of cousins of mine, a couple of my nephews." And this was in Buck Rogers' time. He brought out these 2 black pistols that were Buck Rogers, and they popped or something when you pulled the trigger. Didn't let us touch them, he just showed us one. We thought, whoa, God, I'd like to have one of those. Maybe it's us, I don't know. Then he put it away. We found out later it was just a game he played, because he gave us each bronze-colored big ones that not only made the sound, but the sparks were out on the end of it and everything. Yeah, he was kind of a favorite of us kids, because he was kind of a high roller, you know. He always had to give us a quarter, you know, and stuff like that, when a nickel was big in those times. In fact, I remember going to a store one time. when we were doing the produce, and we went to the store, and my dad gave us each a dime. My younger brother and I, we got about a bunch of penny candy with part of it, I remember that. My older brother got some penny candy, but he put a nickel in the music box. Oh, my dad just, he was, give it to him, you know, guys, do whatever you want. On the ride home, we got a lecture on when you spend money, you put it in you or on you. You don't just let something that goes into your ear and then it's instantaneously gone. But
that was the value of money.
Oh yeah,
It had to
yeah.
to last.
Yeah, that couple of minutes or whatever it was of that song he wanted to hear, and
Yeah.
that was it. His nickel was good. Half his money was gone.
So do you remember buying anything for somebody on Christmas that you saved up for?
Not really. I remember one time I must have been in the 3rd grade or something, and then I had this bottle of, it wasn't perfume, I don't know what it was, and this girl in school I kind of liked, but I went over, and she was a Chicano, and in those days that didn't matter who was what, and I remember going over to her neighborhood to give it to her, but nobody come to the door, so I left it with a note on the front porch, and I don't know if they were in there and saw me and didn't want to open the door or what. That was the only time I ever really bought something for somebody else, other than family, of course. You know, family, you did.
Did she let you know that she received it?
No, I don't remember anything else about it.
Like Charlie Brown's little redheaded
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't remember. I probably wouldn't even done it, but I had a chance. I don't know what that bottle.
Cologne, probably.
Probably. I don't remember how I come across it or anything. I think it was something my mother had gotten and didn't want or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. She never was for plain, simple things, you know, she never did ever.
Yeah.
Well, like Marion herself, I don't ever remember her going to a hairdresser or anything like that.
Yeah.
What you see is what you get. Always clean, always nice, always that. In fact, I get a kick out of seeing people see her and say, gee, you look nice, look good. She says, I get that out of a drawer. Attitude.
So, what do you think have been the most valuable experiences in your life?
Staying healthy and staying alive, I think, and enjoying it. I think try to avoid the 3 things that are bad for you. Tension, stress, and pressure. Those are the things that get people, really.
Yeah.
Their job,
True.
you know, if you're not happy in your job, get another job, get another. If somebody's giving you a bad time, you just try to ignore them and let it go in one ear or out the other or something. I can't say what's good for other people, but there's people during your life that upset you and they're either jealous or envious or something, and they don't like you for some reason, that they're going to try to make life unbearable for you. Maybe they got problems, they're going to pass them on to you or whatever. I try not to let any of those kind of things bother me. So far I've been successful until this interview. Now, I'll get this.
You have anything else you want to say? That might be a good place to stop.
No, I really don't. I'm glad to be here, and I don't know what help this is going to be for you, but take it and run with it.
Gonna be great. Thank you very much.
You bet.